Hey everyone, thanks for joining us on another episode of TGG Cares. I'm super excited about today's guest and the ministry, the nonprofit that we're bringing on today. It's near and dear to my heart. I'm currently the president of the board of Collision in Sioux Falls, and I'm joined by John Glasser. What is your role? CEO?
It's like head
founder,
janitor,
head janitor, whatever.
president, founder.
Yeah. Errand runner, whatever needs to be done, right?
Whatever it takes.
Thanks for joining me, man. This is going to be fun. And like I said, super close and near and dear to my heart. So I hope this conversation comes across and just lets people in on what is going on at Collision and just the exciting stuff we're seeing in Sioux Falls, the schools, the youth, and then also nationally, which is super cool that I don't think a ton of people know about just yet. So
Awesome.
real quick, what is Collision for that person that has no idea who John Glasser is or what Collision does?
Collision's a student-led ministry. We build teams of students, build them, and we equip them to share the hope of Jesus, to transform lives. And they see in that process their school as a mission field.
Yeah.
That's what Collision is.
That's what it is. And the thing I love about Collision is it is all about building up the students to learn how to share their faith, what their faith is, why it's important, how to give others hope. And so it's all student-led, really.
Yes.
I mean, you're obviously a part of it, and
Right.
the other leaders at Collision, but it's all about pouring into the youth and
Absolutely.
and teaching them how to share their faith. And
Right.
so that's what I love about it. One of the things. So tell us, let's start off, jump into it. I know there's so much cool stuff, so I want to get into the stories
Cool.
and get into that. I want to share, can I share
Yeah.
my story
He's got
real
a great
quick?
story. Got a great story.
So my nephew, Miles, shout out to Miles.
What's up, Miles?
And he is a sixth grader, and he is in the collision groups at Edison. And anyhow, he started going at the beginning of the school year, I believe, or shortly after, but just gotten involved in the collision ministry there and in the groups that meet before school. But Miles, I would say, is kind of a quiet kid, or maybe, keeps to himself, kind of typical, maybe sixth grade kid. But he started going to collision. His dad dropped him off one morning, and he goes, man, this is my favorite thing I do all week is go to collision. And his dad was kind of surprised because he's a big basketball player, big football player, into sports. And he kind of questioned, really, you like this better than basketball? That's what he was playing at the time. And he said, it's the same, just as much as basketball. So for a young guy, just to be that excited about what God's doing through collision, and really, I think it stems from even in his own life and his own relationships. I just thought that was really cool, and his dad
really
just
cool.
super proud to hear that it was rivaling his sport. So
And see, I don't know Miles as a quiet kid. Like, I know Miles
Yeah.
as like talking, 20 miles a minute, and like.
and you said he just steps up and leads those groups.
He does. He's
when he's
amazing.
there. Yeah.
He's an amazing kid.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know there's some other really cool stuff. So what are some of the stories that have stood out to you this school year?
Yeah, so Collision's been around, as you know, for 14 years. And when it was started by a student who really had a burden, I would say is a good word, or like a heaviness for the brokenness around her in her school. And she wanted to do something about it. So that's really like the hero of our story, is a student that really wants to change the culture, wants to change the environment to bring peace, to bring hope in a potentially, violent place in some cases.
Yeah.
We're working in a place in Texas where 3 kids just died a couple weeks ago of fentanyl, and
Wow.
like 7 of them are in the hospital. So, every environment is broken.
Yeah.
And we're all broken.
Absolutely.
So I'll just share a quick story from a girl in South Dakota who just is drenched in brokenness. And when we say that, like, we're all broken. So it's your level of like vulnerability and like sharing your brokenness.
Yeah.
So I would say a girl that was very willing and vulnerable about her own brokenness. And just seeing like a leader recognize her in the hall, sitting by herself, and like willing to take the initiative to connect with somebody that you don't know.
Another student?
Another student.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's a very vulnerable place
Absolutely.
as a student. I mean, you remember going to high school
Yeah. Or middle school.
or middle school?
Kind of awkward years. Yeah.
And just being about yourself. Like,
Yeah.
probably one of the most selfish times of my life
For sure.
was high school, middle school.
Yeah.
That's your world is centered around yourself. I guarantee that whoever's taking a picture of you, the first thing that you do is you look for who? You look for yourself in the picture.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That was my world,
Yeah.
like centered around myself. So this girl in T reached out, and from that moment, this girl has not come to faith yet, but is probably more interested than somebody that's been in church their whole life. So this
Just
girl,
interested in learning. What is this all about? Kind of just.
yeah, so she didn't grow up in a faith household and had really no knowledge of the Bible, no knowledge about Jesus.
Yeah.
And here's another girl that has grown up in faith and is willing to, like, hey, I'm going to sit down with you and we're going to talk through, like, my brokenness, and I'm going to open up to you. I want to hear about what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
And sometimes it just takes that person
Yeah.
to take the initiative in the power of the Holy Spirit and leave the results to God. Like, that's really the key,
Yeah.
is that we're trying to empower students to take the initiative.
Yeah.
Nothing gets done unless somebody says, I'm willing to do something. And usually people don't do anything unless they plan to do it. So even like in sharing the gospel and caring for people, in reaching out, in this girl's case, unless there's a plan to reach out, we don't. Just because we're comfortable with our own habits and our own lives, and we
And
love
we have
to,
our schedule and our plan, and we're always going somewhere, right? So even to stop and recognize somebody, which it sounds like this girl recognized she was hurting
yes,
or lonely or whatever.
Yep.
It just needed somebody to talk to her, but she actually stopped wherever she was headed
and
and
took the
actually stopped
initiative
and took the time and recognized and took the initiative. And
to listen to somebody, to
Yep.
care for somebody, to pray for somebody,
yep.
and then to share her faith with her. Like, this is what Jesus has done in my life.
Yeah.
I'll tell another story about my son. He's at Lincoln High School. He's a senior this year. He's graduating early. His name's Eli. And Eli really has befriended so many students in his own school. But the story of Eli is a story of our neighborhood. So Eli loves working on stuff with his hands. So he's working on his truck. He's helping
Did
build.
you teach him that?
I did not teach him that. I have no skills.
He's just
At all.
jumping right in and figuring it out, huh?
I don't know where he got the DNA. Like,
Yeah.
maybe with your
Isaac was
kids.
telling me that. Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah.
He's so gifted. So there's these two boys in the neighborhood that have befriended him, and two young guys. One's a 6th grader, one's a 7th grader, and Eli has just taken these two guys under his wing. And one of the kids didn't grow up in faith at all. Dad had some exposure to the church early in life, got really hurt by a mom passing away, and they just kind of rejected it. So it's been awesome to watch Eli take the initiative to listen to these guys and to share the gospel with them. And when we say the gospel, it's really the story of Jesus,
Yeah.
his birth, his death, his resurrection. Like, we all live in a broken world.
Yeah.
It's been broken from everything to lying to murder. And we all try to escape it through drugs, alcohol, education, wealth, you name it. We're all trying to escape the brokenness, but it's like a bungee cord. It snaps us right back into brokenness.
Yeah.
And if we die in that state of brokenness, we live separated from God eternally. And most people know where this place is called.
Yeah.
But God didn't intend the world to be that way. He intended it to be filled with love and unity and peace. And anyway, this is the gospel that Eli's sharing with
That's
these two boys.
a real life conversation.
It is.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, boys, where do you see yourself? And so one of the kids ended up really, like, opening his heart to Jesus and starting to, like, grow his faith. And he was over at our house yesterday, like, all day long.
Really?
Yeah, out in the snow, playing. So this is a senior in high school
Yeah.
that's willing to take the initiative when I never was. There was a time in my life when I was filled with selfishness and pride.
Absolutely.
I came to USF when I was 18 and I met Jesus for the first time. He took all of my brokenness, all my sin, and he like canceled it. He crushed it. And now my life is filled with peace and purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
But that's what I love about Collision is that boldness, because it's not like Eli or this other student at T is any more bold in their faith than the next person, but it's that kind of that tool, equipping them with tools to what to say, how to explain, how do they even explain their story to somebody else. But then just that purpose of recognizing, looking for those opportunities, because I think the opportunities are there for all of us.
they are.
We're just maybe our eyes aren't open to be looking for those opportunities. So it's that boldness that I think the Collision students, I've seen that even at the golf tournaments where they're working the holes and they're coming up to myself and 3 other, older men typically that I'm golfing with, and they're like, hey, can I share my faith or tell you why I'm part of Collision? Like that takes courage, or it takes a purpose and equipping, and that's what Collision does for the students. So I love to see that.
Yeah. I got one more story for you.
Let's do it.
on that. So there's a girl named Izzy. She moved to Brandon probably like 3 or 4 years ago, and she was homeschooled and super scared of herself, like of her own shadow. Amazing girl, artistic, like loves music, loves worship, all that stuff, but just afraid to like engage with anybody.
Yep.
So some of the things that we do in Collision to really help elevate confidence and competence is like we'll go care for people in a neighborhood. And caring for people is asking them, like approaching them, whether it's like, hey, we're gonna go to a park and approach people and just go, hey, we're out blessing people in Jesus' name. Like if God were to perform a miracle for you today, what would you want him to do? And she's there with us, like going, my mom's making me be here. I hate this.
Yeah.
I want to pull my eyeballs out. Like, I don't want to be here. To, hey, Izzy, guess what? You're up next. Like, here's a person. You've watched us do it. Now you're going to do it.
It's your turn.
She's like, I hate you. I'm going to kill you.
Yeah.
But Izzy, she did it. And it was an incredible experience for her. And I don't think, it didn't necessarily transform the person.
Yeah.
But the person felt loved and heard and seen. And Izzy got to pray, but what it did for Izzy was life transforming. Like it brought her out of her shell. So I think a year and a half ago, they moved to Oklahoma City, her and her parents. And she started to work for Life Church, Greg Crushell's church.
Oh, yeah.
And started to do an internship there and had a burden and a heart for the students in Oklahoma City. So she came out of her shell through those prayer walks, through those experiences, being involved in Collision in Brandon, to now like leading as a staff person for Collision in Oklahoma City.
Wow.
So here you take a kid that is a homeschool kid that's scared of her own shadow to like, she is bold. And when she speaks, it's profound. Like she had it all in her. There was gold inside of her that God had placed in her. The key to unlock it was like, how do we help build their confidence and competence? Yeah. And the business world has it. When you train somebody with Tyler Goff Group, like you're not just going, hey, read this book and listen to me lecture you about real estate for the next year. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, we're going to get on the phone together. We're going to make some phone calls to people. Yeah. Or you're going to do some reach outs, but you're going to watch me do it, and then I'm going to watch you do it. I'm going to give you tips. So we're taking some business principles and trying to apply that to our faith.
Because really, it's just overcoming fear.
It is.
And I think like a sales call or a prayer walk, it's like you're saying, it's no different. We all have that fear before we make that call or before we approach that person of, oh man, they're going to get mad, they're going to hang up, or they're going to yell at me, or they're going to be upset that I asked them to, whether it's pray for them or just ask what their goals for real estate are, whatever the nature of it is. And so what you're saying is what she found and what others have found is that by doing it, oftentimes the response can be different than what the fears in the back of our mind think they're going to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's 2 other kids that play right along with that. Can I share their stories?
Yeah, let's go.
Great. You guys okay out there?
We got more stories. This is a story time with John.
All right, so there's 2 boys, Nate and Brady. They're both from Brandon. Amazing Catholic kids. Grew up in the Catholic system, go to Risen Savior. They're now both freshmen in college, one at USD playing football, one at Dakota Wesleyan also playing football, both amazing young men. So I watched them move from that place of like, I'm not really confident in sharing my faith, to like massive confidence where they were bringing the whole entire football team together before the plays and like, hey guys, we're going to pray. And then we're going to reach out to the other team to ask them to pray with us. And we're going to give glory to Jesus for this as Catholics, like, which, you know, sometimes we expect that in the Protestant world, but like these guys blossomed where they were planted.
Wow.
And now they're still growing and still communicating as college students like, hey, John, like, this is what we're doing at DWU. Like, hey, can you help us with this? And I'm talking to this person. So it's not just something that gets trained and then dies. We're watching 1 million students a year leave the faith after they graduate high school.
Wow.
So by 2050, our churches are going to be half the size they are now. That's the stats. Half.
That's depressing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got 330 million people in America. You got a big, huge size percentage. 97% say that they're Christian of some kind. But, you know, you take the church population and drop it by half.
Yeah.
Now you look like Europe. So why is faith important? That's why you're having this discussion. So you guys believe like in investing into the younger generation, not just because of all the brokenness, but because faith brings values to who I am, to how I behave, to what I value in a community, to staying in a community, to coming back and investing in Sioux Falls.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm seeing year after year, after 14 years, is young men and women that graduate high school that have been trained, equipped with simple tools, how to read, how to self-feed themselves the Word of God, how to pray for each other, how to care about somebody else. And that makes for a community member that's valuable.
Absolutely.
That can come back and reinvest in this community so that we can have other Tyler Goffs raise up when you're 80.
Yeah.
Which isn't going to happen.
I feel 80.
You're
My
like
back,
30,
I was just saying, my
35.
back's hurting. I'm walking around like an 80-year-old man.
You're like,
nothing to get. There's some sharp 80-year-old men out there.
There's some really
I'm sure
sharp
that
80-year-old
make me
men.
look slow. So nothing against them.
Right.
But, and that's what I think the collision, those tools they're lifelong tools.
Yeah.
It's not just a group that you're part of through middle school, high school, and then like these guys going on the football team in college, and they're picking up right where they left off in high school.
Yes.
And bringing that and growing it even in their college sphere of influence.
Well, there's a board member with us, Alan Sazama. Alan, if you're out there, hey, what's up?
What's up, Alan? How we doing?
So here's a kid in
Go
Harrisburg.
Bears.
He's a Packers fan.
He's a big Packers fan.
Anyway, here's a Harrisburg kid that I met years ago. He's a leader. He's a leader in FCA. He's a leader in collision. And God's using him to influence and impact a ton of students at Harrisburg High School. He leaves, goes to medical school, goes up into the cities to do his residency. And he's challenged a lot with the real world, like seeing the horrors of the ER and like that really ripping the internal, like inside of him. Like, how do I deal with this? But God, like, bringing him back to his faith and then bringing him to Sioux Falls. And now he's, like, an amazing contributing member of Sioux Falls.
Yeah, it's fun to see and just the direction of his life and his, what he's got going for him. So
even some of the other kids that have come through, we have a huge heart for the ELL population, which are English language learners. So that's, you know, everywhere from Somalia to Ethiopia to Eritrea to Nepal, Ukraine. We have some amazing young men and women that weren't from Sioux Falls, that didn't grow up in America. Some of the hungriest learners that I've ever met.
Oh, for sure.
There's one guy, Abu Bakar. He went to Lincoln High School, and I got to know him there. He's opened a store in Mogadishu on 10th Street. So if you want some good African
Is it grocery store?
It's a
Or is
grocery
it-
store.
yeah.
It's a grocery store. But he cooks this little like I can't remember the name of it. It's like sambusa, I think, is what it's called.
Okay.
It's like a little meat pocket with bread around it, and
Like
anyway.
a Hot Pocket, but
Yeah,
better.
way better.
Yeah.
So go to Mogadishu and get a Hot Pocket.
Yes.
Which is
A real
sambusa.
Hot Pocket.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An amazing guy. You know, his background was Islam, but he was part of Collision his entire 4 years, and like had some amazing encounters with Jesus. If you go into his store today and ask him about Collision, he'd be like, "Oh man, that was amazing. I want to like
Yeah.
experience
Still
more
on
worship."
fire.
Yeah. So it's kids like that now are reinvesting back into Sioux Falls and making 10th Street a great place. And he has a vision for like, hey, how do I help these younger guys that are getting recruited into gangs from my people group
Yeah.
and the Eritrean people group? There's a guy named Moses that we work with. He's got a whole soccer program for Eritrean young men. He works with 60 young men every Sunday, I don't know how often they meet for soccer,
Yeah.
but they meet at D1
Huh.
and they play soccer.
And that's his ministry field, if you want to call
That's
it.
his ministry.
That's the way he gives back and pours into those young guys.
Yeah, and he lets us come in every Sunday and bring pizza and feed them. And then we get to share the gospel with them and go through the scriptures. But some of those young men are starting to rise up and self-identify. It's like, hey, I want to lead.
Yeah.
I want to be trained.
That's awesome.
So despite all of our brokenness as a city and all
Yeah.
of the brokenness that everybody can complain about, which is broken families, gang violence, drugs, alcohol, pornography,
Yeah.
sexual addiction, that's just getting younger and younger. Like we also have some amazing things that God's doing
Yeah.
in the midst of all that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think it's easy to focus on, oh man, this generation, right? I feel like every generation says that when they get to be a certain age, it's like they look down on the youth, right? And it's like, oh,
Yes.
this generation, they're really bad.
Right.
You know, they don't know the values and the traditions that we grew up with, so therefore they're a lost cause.
Right.
And I think you hear that a lot about the young generation today, of just they're way different, and maybe they're disconnected. They're all
They're lazy.
digital. They're lazy. They don't want to really work. They
Yep.
just want to sit on social media, be on their phones. They don't know how to talk to people. They can't communicate. All those things. What are you seeing with this generation? Do those ring true?
No, they don't. I think when you get to know the kids that are coming up and you start to get in their lives, you start to realize the narratives that are good, like selling news media sound bites, are not true, and you can't categorize people that way. So give it one example. Noah, who's a 7th grader at Ben Rifle, amazing kid, huge heart. He's brought his friends together. Like he not only like came to know Christ, but he led his friends to come to know Christ. And this kid is a leader of leaders. So what I see is resilience. What I see is a lot of pain from the brokenness.
Yep.
And you hear it if you actually stop for a minute to listen to a young person. So that would be my challenge for you is if you're at Walmart and you're checking out on the east side, there's a lot of amazing young Nepali people that work at Walmart. Just ask them, like, hey, tell me your story.
Yeah.
You're going to hear some amazing stories. Or if you're at Hy-Vee, there's a ton of young people that work at Hy-Vee. They go to Washington High School, over here on Sycamore, here on Cliff. Just take the time to listen to their stories.
Yeah.
The pain has caused growth that my generation didn't have. So yeah, there's a lot of bad things. It was the worst of times, and it was the best of times.
Yeah.
That would be the greatest way that I can describe this generation. It is one of the greatest generations in my lifetime that I've seen. They're going to do more and go further
Yeah.
because they've had to overcome more.
Yeah. Yeah. You said persevere. I think that's a good, and it sounds weird because it's not like we've had a world war when they've grown up, or a Great Depression, or some of those things that we kind of tie to resiliency and perseverance. But I feel like this generation, this day and age, they are inundated with negative, whether it's just comments or negative stories or information. I mean, what they have to overcome on a daily basis builds that. And I think is going to build that character. But I think what's important is kind of what we started this conversation off with, is that there's got to be someone there to approach and open up maybe that hurt to help heal that.
Yeah.
And being able to, so I think that's why collision, I believe, is so important, is to get other people to recognize other people, initiate that conversation. And if you get those skills at an early age, as a seventh grader, like Noah, or as a senior in high school, you can get those skills. You're going to do a lot of good.
Yeah.
Especially in the people in your little circle.
You take
or
that
maybe
character
your big city.
and combine it with some really simple tools.
Yeah.
And really what we're talking about is relationship building schools.
Yeah.
Or skills.
Yeah.
And they need that. That's a gap that's missing. And I think it's stemming from family brokenness. Most of the issues that we have in America today are because of broken families.
And really, which is probably from broken communication.
Right.
You know, because of our phones, because of all the distractions, that the communication just breaks down pretty easily, or can. So
if you can give those skills early, how do I listen? How do I communicate?
Yep.
How do I have a spiritual dialogue? How do I broach that subject, which is very hard?
Yeah.
Because it's coming from a very vulnerable spot if you're going to share your story with somebody. And then inviting somebody into God's story, because he's the one that can bring healing. He's the one that can bring change. You just think about when Christianity started. You know, here's the birth of Christ and what the Roman world was like, how it viewed women, how it destroyed life early on. Like, you just look at the world the way it was and what Christianity has done for the Western world in music, in science, in math, every subject that our kids are learning. The historical basis has been like the dawn of Christianity and the Enlightenment and all of that. So I do believe we have amazing churches in this community.
Absolutely.
We're sitting in one right now.
Yep.
Embrace, Central, Celebrate, the Catholic churches, the Lutheran churches. Like, God really wants to do a work here in bringing his body together and unifying them. Rich McCurris talks a lot about this, but I really think like if we can stop duplicating processes with our young people as churches and bring them together, there's power in that. Unity.
What do you mean duplicating processes?
So a church kid, for example, like Isaac. Isaac's my oldest.
Yep.
He would get invited to 4 or 5 different youth groups every week. And so there was no attachment to anything. It was like, hey, I'll go to that one. If I don't like that, I'll go to this one.
Gotcha.
I'll go to this one. I'll go to this one. There was no like
Community.
home basis.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah. So our dream and heart is like, can we help students bloom where they're planted? It's like, hey, if you're at Risen Savior in Brandon, instead of transplanting you out of that, can I have you bloom in your faith there and start to make an impact on other students there? Yeah, it may not be the greatest thing or feel the greatest or whatever, but like there's logic beyond the feeling, and there's a vision that God has here to do with you here. So as we work with students, having them look at like, what is your oikos? What does God call you to do with your sister, your brother, your parents? Like that's the
Right
first.
where you are.
Right where you are.
Yeah.
That's the hardest mission field.
Oh, for sure.
It's
Your
easier to
own
go
family.
like, hey, let's go to somewhere else where they don't know me.
Yeah.
And let's share my faith there and let's pray for people there because it's less scary.
Mm-hmm.
But man, as that confidence and competence builds, I have seen young men and women shine in their families
Yeah.
and be a light to like lead their parents to Jesus
Yeah.
and to church, to get them reconnected into church. I've sat on my sidewalk and talked to a guy who has just been troubled his whole life, not plugged into a community of believers, and listened to him and listened to him and listened to him. And through his son, like coming to faith, sparking that interest again. So
Wow.
don't, I would say this, as we've watched Asbury ignite
Yep.
something, and Lee University and other places around the country, I think God is doing something very unique and special right now. And it's not just in America, it's all over the world. So we're like sitting on the precipice of, I believe, a great awakening. And what that means is an awakening to who God is and who he says we are.
Yeah.
And those values and vision that we get from him determine like our communities, what they look like, what we value.
Yeah. That's good. And I think that, yeah, I want to talk about the home, like the family, because I do think that's a hard place to start, which sounds weird because it's the people we care about the most, the people that care about us the most and that know us best. We talk about it in our men's group, though, leading at home sometimes can be the hardest place because we always say as dads, it's like they see the ugliest side of us.
For sure.
You know, so it's sometimes you feel like, well, if you've seen that ugly side of me, how then can I, you know, claim to be this godly person or, try to influence you in your faith, you know? And I think it's that vulnerability of just, yeah, I am broken still. I do have a ugly side sometimes where my anger gets the best of me, but I have something living inside of me where I've been forgiven and I have hope and, something to be able to even say, I'm sorry to somebody that we care about is sometimes really hard, but also almost the most powerful thing we can say to those closest to us.
Yeah.
But it starts with that opening up and really just being vulnerable, which we've been learning a lot about personality traits and characteristics, and vulnerability is the greatest sign of courage that we have, which sounds weird because I think as men, at least,
Opposite.
we think, courage is, I don't tell anybody anything. I just take on my day and take on my problems and attack them, in this isolated way. And I don't share anything with anybody. And really, the more vulnerable we can be is a greater sign of courage.
Yeah, I think of one story about that. You mind if I share a story?
Well, you haven't shared any yet, so let's open it up.
All right, so the schools and the counselors and the principals, we love you. We just want to say that, like, they are fighting a battle that you may not understand. And mental health after COVID was literally a massive issue, still is a massive issue. And I saw that play out with students, some of which were courageous enough to step forward and just be like, hey, I am dealing with suicide. We've run into more suicidal students this year than ever before. So it's, all right, we're a reporting agency, so we got to report that. We got to call the counselor. We got to call the school. We got to call. But one of my friends came out a couple weeks ago and just put it online. Like, hey, this is a guy that's, mid-30s, but has struggled with suicidal thoughts since he was like 7.
Wow.
And detailed, like, hey, one of the first pictures that I saw was like me lying dead in the snow, bloody, and went and got a brain scan finally in Dallas from an institute and found out that he doesn't have blood flow to these lobes right here, which are the hallucinating centers and just different things. So for so long, he thought he was just messed up. And so now he's finding freedom and hope. And so it's not all just a spiritual issue, even though sometimes it is. It's also a mental issue. So when you think about young men and women and their needs, you can pray that God intersects and intercedes into the mental health arena. It's bigger than we understand and know.
Yeah.
And a lot of it's caused from trauma at home. And there's a lot of trauma. So when we talk about this generation's one of the greatest for their perseverance and overcoming obstacles, vulnerability is part of that, but being vulnerable and just going like, hey, I am struggling in this area.
Yeah.
I am struggling. And having a trusted adult listen and go, I believe you. Let's get some help.
Yeah.
One of the most courageous things that I've seen students do over and over. They're the most courageous people on the planet because they're not afraid. A lot of them are not afraid to be vulnerable and just to go, I have to open this up
Yeah.
and share it. Otherwise, it's going to destroy me.
Yeah. Wow. It's good.
And those are hard conversations that we get text messages at 2 or 3 in the morning where kids are struggling and they're texting you going like, hey, I'm thinking about ending my life. And you have to do something about it.
Yeah.
You have to report it. And so I know and pray for the schools, pray for the counselors, pray for the teachers because they are taking on roles that they shouldn't.
Yeah.
And they're taking on like mom and dad roles.
Yeah, in some cases, for sure.
And I could tell you story after story after story
Yeah.
to protect the people that were vulnerable.
Yeah.
I'm not going to, but they happen all the time.
Well, one place that there will be some stories that are shared is the celebration dinner, which is coming
Yes.
up next month.
It
So
is.
April 23rd,
Yes, sir.
5 o'clock,
Yep.
Convention Center.
Convention Center.
Huge event. It's going to be an awesome night. And really, it's just that. It's a celebration of what's happening in Sioux Falls through Collision, through the schools, through the youth. It's a fun night of hearing more stories like this, getting more familiar with Collision and what that looks like, and like we're doing here today.
Yes.
And so if you want to hear more stories, there's going to be a ton at that celebration. We have openings for table. If you're interested, what's the best way to get connected for that?
You can go to www.collision.org and just click on the celebration link. You can sign up to be a table host. If you want to host a table of 10, you can bring yourself and 9 others, you and a spouse, you and a partner. Fill the auditorium.
I think I have 2
fill it.
spots. If you're interested, reach out, let me know, and you can have a spot at my table as well.
Yeah.
So
There's one last story I want to tell
right.
about that. So there's a
This will be
kid,
good.
Anthony. If you're out there, you go to Jefferson. Amazing young man, athlete. Really came to know the Lord through an accident that happened to him. And so he was like me. He was filled with himself until that happened. And sometimes we have to hit rock bottom in order for God to get our attention.
Yeah.
And when he does, he gives us the grace to come back to him, not based upon how great we are and how many good things we can do and the list of, here's what I've
Thankfully.
done for you, God,
Thankfully.
right?
Yeah.
But it's through faith in what he's done for us. So this happened to Anthony. I met with him last summer and one of his buddies from Jefferson High School. And they had a vision of like, man, we really want to like make an impact on our school. And we love FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes. If you haven't heard of it, it's a great organization as well. We partner with them. And we're like, sweet, let's build FCA up at Jefferson. Let's get it going. The greatest way to do that, we're meeting at Buffalo Wild Wings.
Food.
Anthony, food attracts.
Yep.
They're eating Buffalo Wild Wings.
Yeah.
Got a bunch of his buddies there. And we're just asking the question, like, what does it look like to make an impact at Jefferson? What does that mean? How can you change the culture there? What do you want to change? What is wrong? What are the issues? And we heard everything from all of what we talked about, all the brokenness. Here it all is. Even when the families are great and they're doing well and they have funding, and so it's not all just poverty level. This affects everybody. So we started training, started meeting with them. Their FCA has like blossomed at Jefferson, and the teachers that are helping it have grown it. But the training that we've done with those guys has been profound, and like they're making a huge impact. Not only does it impact them personally, their faith grows. It's kind of like this. If you want to get healthy, the greatest way for you to get healthy is to help somebody else get healthy. Because there's a natural accountability that happens. When I say, hey, Tyler, I'm going to help you get healthy, guess what? Now I can't be like eating snacks and drinking Mountain Dew all day long.
Yeah.
You'd be like, sure, way to go. So even coming to families, like having dads and moms step up in their faith, holds a family. It elevates the ships. All the ships
Yeah.
rise, even however broken I am with my own family.
Yeah.
Like when I step up and
That's
go,
good.
hey, I'm going to pray with your mom, and try to do that every day. Like kids are smart and they listen
Yeah.
and they watch.
And they're watching everything.
They watch everything that you do. What you say and what you do matters.
Yeah.
So
Even more so what we do.
more so than what we do. So
Then,
Anthony,
yeah.
you're being a great example. I'm so proud of you. Thank you for saying yes to the challenge. So that kid is making a huge impact on Jefferson. So one kid, it's like Jesus used 2 loaves or 2 fish and 1 loaf or however much he used, but he multiplied it, right? He multiplied the effect. That's what we're seeing is like one faithful student can change an entire school.
Yeah. Which is encouraging. It's like our life matters. What we do matters
It
to
does.
the people around us, to our schools, to our business, to our community, to our city, our state. It matters.
It does.
And we can have that ripple effect that carries on for long after we're gone.
So one company can also transform the business sector, can transform lives in real estate. Like you help somebody with integrity and character and love and concern, that has a ripple effect too. Because guess what? They tell their friends. Like Tyler Goff Group is amazing. Like they help me do this, this, and this. And I know you're talking about collision, but it's true.
Yeah. You should be the spokesperson for Tyler Goff Group. I like that. You're good at it.
Check them out. Buy a home from them. Anyway.
Yeah. Awesome. So check out more information. This is great. I mean, we keep going on and on.
Right.
We got to save some of it for the celebration.
Oh, we didn't
dinner.
talk about national expansion.
We didn't.
You want to just
Let's
you wanna
talk-
touch base on that real quick?
Yeah. So let's national expansion. So what's happening with collision here in Sioux Falls is getting recognized,
Yeah.
which is the coolest part. It's not like John had this idea of I'm going to bring this to other places. I like doing this so much. But it's people reaching out saying, how are you doing what you're doing in Sioux Falls and how can we do it here? So that kind of sets the stage, but talk about what's happening on national expansion.
Sounds good. Thanks. And then
Yeah.
we can conclude. So I'll just give you a quick story. A couple years ago, almost died from COVID. I was in the hospital. When you come close to death and you experience the presence of God, you're not afraid to talk about it anymore because it doesn't really matter what people think.
You're changed.
You're
saying.
transformed.
Yeah.
And God gave me a real, like, I think, kick in the butt to like, hey, I've been asking you to do this to make an impact in our nation, and I'm going to open the doors. I just need your yes. And I was like, I just want to stay in Sioux Falls. It's such a great community.
Yeah,
I don't
it's comfortable.
I don't want to travel. I don't
Yeah.
want to like pay the price of that. That's expensive. So anyway, after that, opened my heart and the door to that growth. So we had a former board member who was a missionary in Turkey. He lives in Parker. He reached out and he's like, hey, there's a couple boys in Dallas. A kid named Nolan. He's 14, and he's on this thing called Discord. Discord is a place where it's kind of like a chat room. There's 330 million users on Discord. Wow. Started as a gaming server, and now it's like anybody and everybody comes together, and they get together based on the interests and activities they like to do. So this kid, Nolan, who's 14, he's like, hey, I'm going to go into Discord, and I want to bring a team with me, and we're going to go in and just share our story and God's story in all these different servers. So there's atheist servers, there's Islamic servers, there's all these different things. So he's taking adults and other students with him every Friday night and going in and like sharing the gospel with people online and bringing hope to a lot of hopeless situations.
Wow.
And they've seen people give their lives to Christ. They've seen baptisms come out of it. Like,
Through these chat rooms,
Yeah.
essentially.
this kid's 14. I'm telling you, one kid can transform with a yes, Lord, I will do that. You can transform the world. So Nolan had a friend named Ben who goes to a high school of 5,500 students. So it's like a college campus.
Yeah.
And we've been able to help both of them and their parents really see vision for like, how could God use your story to impact, influence other believers at your school? and see the entire school hear the gospel in 1 year. So we've been helping Dallas and helping these boys, and that team has grown. I told you the story already about Izzy going to Oklahoma City, moving there,
Yep.
having a heart for that. That's grown. We're helping another ministry in Kansas City. So there's so much opportunity. So if you're out there and you want to see this done and you have some connections in other parts of the country, would love to hear from you. You can get a hold of me easily through our website. So
Yeah. The website is below, link below in the chat. And so we could keep doing this.
yeah,
Uh,
go buy a home from Tyler Goff Group. That would help us as well.
Yep, it would. Way to turn the table.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
welcome.
put the spotlight on us here. But in all seriousness, go to collisionsf.org,
Nope, collision, www.collision.org.
collision.org.
Just like a car
And,
accident.
and yes, yep. And so check that out. There's more information. There's calendar of events. There's ways to get connected with John or somebody else there at Collision, and ways that you can get involved as well.
Do you know why she called it that?
Why?
Collision? It's because the analogy that was shared was that when you get hit by a Mack truck, you're on the road, just imagine this, you're standing there, Mack truck, boom, you're never the same, ever.
It's a life-changing event.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you encounter God that way, you're never the same.
Wow. That's powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
It's
as
good.
you were just calling out the website.
good.
Just wanted to share that story.
Well, John, he'll get you fired up. He's passionate about what he does. He's passionate about Jesus and the change and the hope that he offers. So come to the celebration dinner, find out more about that, and we'd love to connect there. But thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you as always.
Thank you, Tyler.
It's always good
You're a
to
blessing.
see you.
My hand's cold,
Appreciate
sorry.
you coming on and chatting, and we'll have to do it again.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you so much.
We'll see you next time.